Well, folks, thanks for tuning in again today to the day-to-day broadcast. We're getting the news to you, the news that matters, and you get a quick look behind the scene on all of these headlines, and hopefully that'll save you a lot of time. You can zero in on the things that matter most. There is a talk of, are we edging closer to a third world war? Before we jump onto that story, a big story right now in as far as the Olympics go. Canada has always been seen as the good guy, the good girl, the straight up honest player. But now Canada's, according to the headline, been caught in what they call it red-handed in a qualifying sabotage against American athletes. This has to do with the International Bobsleigh and Skeleton Federation. A great fun event to watch, and apparently there was some skullduggery going on with the Canadians being able to manipulate some numbers and some points and pull some athletes, and the result of that was the U.S., one of the U.S. stars, five-time Olympian, Katie, I'm not going to pronounce the name correctly, but Katie Underladen, is actually being barred from entering because of a very complicated point manipulation. 15 countries have joined in the protest against Canada. So hopefully Canada just takes a quick look at this and moves things around and say, hey, let's let the qualifiers qualify, and we'll get away from that bad story about Canada right now. But really the big story is the fact they say the Doomsday clock, which is a theoretical timing machine. It's not an actual clock that sits there, but where people who are involved in monitoring events around the world say we're closer to a possible World War III than we have been. And this is as a result of the U.S. is saying to Iran, you've got to stop killing, you've got to stop slaughtering citizens on the streets of Iran. And the U.S. has brought their naval fleet and other armaments closer to Iran all the time. The USS Abraham Lincoln, one of the most formidable floating displays of military power, drawing closer to Iran. Iran has said they will, of course, as they usually say, this will be the mother of all attacks, and they'll rain down fire on the Americans and the rest of the world. So people quite rightly are getting a little jittery now. And the U.S. saying to Iran, you've got to stop slaughtering citizens in the street. Interesting that the people who usually protest these type of things about countries slaughtering citizens, they're just, you don't see them out in the streets that much, not in Canada or the U.S. Anyway, a very tense situation, tense times right now. And hopefully Iran is going to back down, because this will involve other countries if Iran starts to fight back internationally. Well, talking about the ability to fight back internationally, a big story out there today. The Canadian Coast Guard has sort of gone through, Canadian Coast Guard, by the way, the men and women there are, I would say, among the best in the world at what they do. And the Canadian government is maintaining its position of not allowing them to be armed. They're the only Arctic nation in the world whose Coast Guard is not armed. This is a ridiculous situation. It goes back to the days where we sort of had this make-believe picture of Canadians are all just nice and warm, and all we do is walk around and say and sorry, and so we don't properly arm people in security and protective positions. Listen, I was in Afghanistan twice with our men and women there. I'll tell you what, they are among the best in the world, best fighters in the world, and they know what to do with all types of modern armament. So to carry this ridiculous notion that Canadians are just all about peace and we're not worried about drug runners out there being intercepted by Canadian Coast Guard, because the Canadian Coast Guard, without any firearms, will just talk nice to them, I guess. So in a time of when NATO is asking for its forces, including Canada, to join together, especially protecting the North, at a time when the U.S. is criticizing Canada for not wanting to be involved in the dome protection studies. Not a good look. I was the Minister of Public Safety back in the 2000s when we finally allowed, under Prime Minister Harper, we took the case forward and finally allowed our border officers to be armed. Believe it or not, this ridiculous liberal notion that Canadian peace officers don't need firearms to protect citizens. Let's get that changed and just take an order from the top. There's all kinds of more duties being required of Coast Guard these days. Let's make sure these men and women are properly armed so they can defend Canadians. Well, the federal rate, the Fed rate in the U.S. has, as we predicted right here, those of you who watch regularly and listen to the show, you'll know we were predicting that it would announce the rate is holding steady, and they have announced that. They're going to keep it in about that 3.5% range to try and keep inflation in check. And Canada, again, needs to keep an eye on this because Canadian inflation rate is running higher than predicted. And remember, and I'll say this every day if I have to, folks, there are a number of factors that affect inflation. Inflation is basically you losing buying power from your dollar. And the single greatest factor that affects inflation is governments spending with borrowed money. And that's what the Canadian government is doing. They're not pulling it into check. And at the same time, they'll rant about affordability and they'll try and blame the private sector. And yet it is government that causes inflation. Every time you hear, and please keep this in mind, any government, this is nonpartisan, whether it's federal, whether it's provincial, state, or municipal, and I don't care if it's conservative or liberal, every time a government announces increased spending, if they're doing that with borrowed money, which the Canadian government is, that means inflation. That means you are losing buying power, no matter what kind of rebate the government tries to give you. So please keep that in mind. Somebody who has been pretty steady at keeping that message up is the leader of the official opposition in Canada, Pierre Poilievre, and he faces a leadership vote, a leadership review. That'll be coming up Friday of this week in Calgary at the convention. I'll be there and I'll give you a report right from there. People think, and I join those who think that he's doing a good job, that he's been strong in pointing out what needs to be done to get the country turned around. There is speculation he probably needs in the 70%, if not the low 80s, to have the confidence of the party moving into an election. So let's watch and see what happens there. My prediction is there will not be a surprise. You will see good support for Pierre Poilievre in the last election, though they lost because of the Trump effect and because of the Liberals quickly getting rid of Justin Trudeau and bringing a new face on the scene. There is still obviously some concern there, but keep in mind the Conservatives under Poilievre did get the highest voter share in a generation. So the numbers were great. The result was very close. The Liberals didn't get their majority. We will see what's going to happen on that particular front. On the another item related to Canada, but it's gone international and it's in the U.S., Lululemon is started out as an amazing Canadian brand by Chip Wilson, and taking athletic wear into cool-looking athletic wear and setting a whole new fashion trend as well as an athletic workout trend around the world. They've hit another snag. They had these stretch pants called Get Low, and it's been found out that under stress, like lifting weights, the stretch pants are becoming see-through. This was a problem they had way back in 2013 with another kind of pants. And the response, at least to date, Lululemon is trying to fix the situation, but their first response was they sent out a message saying, well, what you need to do, ladies or men, is size up. In other words, get the normal size, look at the normal size of those stretch pants and just take a bigger size. You don't stretch them as much, and wear underwear. So we're going to see how that message resonates in the marketplace. Size up and wear underwear on those stretch pants. Let's see where that goes. Well, in the U.S., there's a company called Nucleus IVF. That's Nucleus Invitro fertilization. That particular company obviously is in the business of in vitro fertilization, And their advertising is really raising more than eyebrows. It's an advertising campaign, and you can see it on the subways of New York and other places. It simply says, pick your baby, and they're emphasizing the fact that it's almost like a cosmetic trend. You go in, you sit down with the technicians who operate the in vitro fertilization, and they say, you know, what eye color would you like? Would you like lighter skin tone? Would you like them to be taller? Would you like them to be shorter? And it's becoming far more. Remember, in vitro was designed initially to help those couples who, for any reason, could not, in fact, conceive and have children as a couple. And then it was advanced even more to be able to anticipate a disease and a child being born with a disease. A lot of people in the Down syndrome community very concerned about that at the time, and they still are. And but now it's really gotten to the cosmetic stage. And of course, the problem is when you go in for your in vitro fertilization, you get to pick from a number, and in some cases, anywhere from 12 to 20 living embryos. They're sitting there. You can look at them under the microscope, I guess, and you get to pick which one you want to live, and the rest, they get eliminated. So that's starting to raise some concerns. Eugenics, which was really something that was pushed by intellectuals in the 1920s and 30s, and then really pushed hard by the Nazi regime in the 30s and 40s. Eugenics is the fixing or the altering of the genetic blueprint to get kind of what you want, kind of designer babies. And Nucleus is pushing back. The company's pushing back. They say, look, it's not going to be too many years from now when 40% of all babies born are going to be through in vitro fertilization. Now, I don't know if that's accurate, but that's what they're saying. And so people should be able to pick and get your cosmetically chosen babies out of that petri dish and eliminate the rest of the embryos that are sitting there. So let's see where that goes. Balancing out that type of approach to life, you know, with all of the terrible stories that have been flying around with this cold wave that has swept really most of North America. Even Florida is feeling the cool, but in the many of the northern states, it's been completely debilitating. A good news story coming out of Cincinnati. You had a situation there, 25 degrees below zero, fresh, almost 10 inches of snow, everything and everybody paralyzed, nobody moving, and a baby needed to be transferred from one hospital to another for life-saving intervention, but in the ambulances, nobody could move. And a snowplow driver heard about that, hopped into the snowplow, drove at speeds of up to 30 miles an hour on empty streets, pushing avalanches of snow away, got in front, they got the ambulance out, and the ambulance followed close behind. They got the baby safely through that crazy blizzard, and the baby is doing well. The snowplow driver says, you know, it's kind of all in a day's work. Interesting story on the ongoing war, of course, in Russia and Ukraine. The first time in history now, this is probably the first time it's been seen, that some Russian soldiers surrendered to a Ukrainian drone. It was a drone-driven machine gun on top of a drone with a Caterpillar-type tread on it, coming out and using its microphone to force Russian soldiers to surrender. You can imagine that's going to be debilitating propaganda being shown all around the world, and especially back in Ukraine. The drone that was used is called the droid TW7, so I can imagine that's going to be appearing on store shelves everywhere. Well, I'll talk about appearing on store shelves. In China, there's a breakthrough, one of these plush dolls, and it's a horse, and it's being called the Cry horse. It was first manufactured accidentally. What was accidental about it was what was supposed to be a smile on the horse was actually by one of the original sewers, was sewn on upside down, so it's a frown, and the manufacturing, the machines just kept going. The company said, oops, sorry, I went to apologize, and then they looked at the sales numbers, and their sales numbers were through the roof. People ordering them, by the young people especially, ordering the Cry horse in the tens of thousands. They say it's a reflection on what's called the 996 rule in China that is forced upon all workers and all young people, and that is that you work from 9 to 9, 6 days a week, and that's how you maintain a competitive edge in the world. That's having quite a heavy-duty effect, especially on the young generation, and that's why they're snapping up these dolls. You may see it go international, the cry horse. Let's see where that goes. Well, Pope Leo put out a statement just yesterday related to marriage. People are wondering if the Catholic Church is going to be changing its position and definition on marriage, and they said no, they are not. They say that changing the definition of marriage is really not in the cards, and it's just it's relativizing. It's just changing from relative views to what they say is a solid biblical view. So that definition is being maintained. If anybody wondered if it was going to be changed by the Catholic Church, maintaining the definition of marriage. And talking about marriage, the latest results of the last 5 years show the divorce rate in Canada and in the U.S., principally in the U.S., divorce rate is going down. Divorce rate is defined by the number of people per thousand. So it's not necessarily married, but the number of all people per thousand that are fixed in that divorce rate. It's been, 5 years ago, it was 4.0 people per thousand, and it has dropped to 2.4% people per thousand. You can, I'm not the social scientist here, I'm just reporting the facts. So there are factors at work. People are managing to stay together longer. I've got a little speculation that some of this should be going to GPS. My wife and I were saying as we drive through the maze of traffic and driving through U.S. Cities recently, being able to get around, knowing which exit ramp, which street to turn on. The GPS has probably saved marriages to a degree just because it eliminates, what should we say, the difference of opinion on where we should turn and which ramp we should take. Folks, there it is for you, the catch up in some of the news stories today. Thanks for listening in. Give us your comments and stay tuned tomorrow. Bye for now.